Is it still morning? Yes. Good morning, everybody. I'm glad you were able to make it here. I know it was a tough travel this morning, so appreciate your joining us. Without much further ado, so my name is Lukas Sokol. I head master planning here for Masdar City. We're joined by most of my team here. We work in a very interdisciplinary way. One of the critical things in achieving a lot of these goals, thank you, is to employ what also Estadama heavily supports, which is the integrated design process. And we'll show you a little bit of how we do that today here in delivering some of our projects. And we'll show you some specific projects as case studies as well. So how many people here are from outside of the UAE? Okay, great. And outside of Abu Dhabi? All right. So what we're going to show you is some projects. Masdar City has been around for more than 15 years now. And one of our real testaments is that there are real proof cases that are in the ground that you can go and visit now. So we really would like to invite you to come and visit Masdar City for yourselves and experience these things. I know there's a lot of talk about sustainability and technologies and a lot of exciting products that actually meet some of the global challenges that we face today. However, it's much more important to see real examples, built examples operating, and see how you can experience them as a human being. So just to frame this up, I'm sure we have a lot of experts here, so I'm sure you're very familiar with these numbers. But the built environment contributes to 40% of total carbon emissions worldwide. Now, the UAE acknowledges this. That's why in 2021, the UAE announced our net zero strategy to help meet some of those goals, which are to meet some of the carbon targets to align with the Paris Agreement. But this will require a complete transformation, particularly of our industry, which accounts for that 40% of development. So those who are new here, of course, we're in Abu Dhabi. You're here in ADNEC, and it's only a 20-minute drive to Masdar City. So please do come by and visit. We're right next to the Abu Dhabi airport. So for those of you who may not be able to come here, there's a few images here. So we're not just a sustainable development, we form an ecosystem to basically supercharge the startup of companies and ideas to help build the physical environment and build the solutions that can help address some of the climate changes. This is a render of Masdar built out overall with some of our statistics. We're about 50% residential, the rest is mixed use. The Abu Dhabi airport's this way, 20 minutes to Attic and about 40 minutes to Dubai. So we have about 15,000 people living and working within Masdar City, as well as about 1,000 companies. We are a free zone. You're very welcome to come and set up your company within Masdar City, fully owned by you, and of course supported by our development ecosystem and the business ecosystem, giving you connections to some of our entities to help supercharge your ideas. But we don't just talk about these things. We do go for several accreditations as well. Not only Estadama, which is the local one, but also our lead targets. And there's a couple special ones that we'd like to point out. One is WELL. So it's not about just making sure we're building more efficient ways to live and work. We also want to make sure that we're increasing the quality of life. For those who are a little bit less familiar with WELL, it addresses essentially the interiors and the quality of the environment for people to work in. We're also going for the Wired score, which is not pictured here, which actually helps the incorporation of technologies within those assets. So we follow the standard three sustainability pillars of environmental, social, and economic, which basically translates to our physical, human, and financial capital. This is critical So of course, we're focused as developers on the physical capital, particularly my master planning team. But the human capital is critical to get that ecosystem going. And so we also focus on the quality of life and public realm so that we can support that innovation ecosystem. Some of the targets, just to get to real numbers, is we do target for 40% reduction from ASHRAE standards for energy. For water, it's also 40%. And waste management, we do divert from the landfill. We actually reuse a lot of that, for example, for road bases within the city. Embedded carbon is about 20% reduction for overall construction. This is one of the biggest challenges here, and I do hope you guys visit some of the companies who are facilitating to alleviate that. This requires exploration of new materials as well as doing existing materials better, such as concrete. And our sustainability targets are minimum of 3 Pearl and Estadama and minimum LEED Gold for buildings. We're actually achieving, I think almost our entire current development portfolio is LEED Platinum. But I'd like to bring this and frame this up again. So technology is the application of knowledge for the practical aims of human life, right? Sometimes we can be a little distracted and enamored with all the amazing technologies we're seeing here at WEFES. All the modern tech, the digital, the augmented, some of the even artificial intelligence that's now coming online. But the important thing is it's all technology and it's all just a means to an end to create a better ecosystem and a higher quality of life. So what that means is it's also older technology. It's the older knowledge that we've developed and collected as a civilization. These are the shoulders that we're standing on to achieve these much higher levels of sustainability. This is one of my favorite diagrams because it really shows kind of the investment that you make and the return you get in terms of sustainability. Particularly that the highest sustainability impact you can achieve is by very simple passive means. Now, many people have probably heard about passive architectural design, but we also employ passive design in master planning and urban design. Just some of those very basic principles are solar orientation. Now, architecturally, if you're trying to mitigate solar gain, because of course we're dealing with heat here, you'd want to orient east to west, right? Because the sun doesn't arc and the main impact is from east to west. However, we're not just designing a building, right? We're laying out and designing a city, which means you're dealing with clusters of buildings, which means if you put those together, they start to shade one another. So we actually do quite advanced modeling to ensure that we can minimize the amount of solar heat at the ground level. The other is wind orientation. So when you're dealing with a hot and humid climate, all you really have is shade and breezes to keep you cool in terms of passive design. So we orient, this orientation actually takes advantage of the cooling breezes from the north, from the northwest. And the third is compactness, right? This one's probably one of the simplest. So this is roughly the size of the Masdar square, which is about 1.5 by 1.5 kilometers. And this large square indicates of how much land would be required if we built as kind of business as usual in terms of distributing our GFA. So you can very easily see that the amount of infrastructure you would require just to service this, just in terms of the wires, the pipes, the roads and all this, to make sure that you can serve that GFA is much, much higher here as opposed to if you make that form more compact. Now, all of this contributes to something very important, which Asha, our transportation manager, is going to talk about later, which is walkability. So keeping everything tight, keeping it compact, keeping a little microclimate effect can enhance the walkability and then ultimately making it cool. Now, again, I said, this is not just theory. These are built examples. Please come and visit us and experience this. So this is a typical day in downtown Abu Dhabi and Masdar, maybe in kind of like a June environment. So where the radiate temperatures can hit 48 here, but the ambient temperatures are 37. Our challenge is actually a little bit higher. We're at 39 because we're not so close to the sea. Abu Dhabi downtown is right on the sea, so they get a little bit more of a cooling effect from the breezes. The real impact, however, once measured, is you can see you get what's called a heat island effect, where the asphalt is exposed, it heats up, and it actually gets to about 57 degrees, as you can see from the infrared. Whereas ours, yeah, we also reach those temperatures, but those temperatures are mitigated by the PVs on the roof that are actually generating power to help then also cool the interiors of those buildings. Meanwhile, our ground is 33. Right? So this is pretty incredible because this is just passive design, those simple choices of where we face the buildings, how to shape them, creating that public realm. These are all decisions that don't cost you anything. And then the final decisions, you focus on the high-tech pieces of PVs and other factors. So this is our overall pathway to net zero. Here's the target that the UAE has set, still very aggressive. But we believe as Masdar City that we're on track for about 2040. Many of these have achieved all this already. So how do we do this? As I mentioned at the beginning, we employ the integrated design process. And why? Because it's also where you can get the most value. So in a project progress, if you take a lot of the factors that are down the road and you pull them up front to help you help guide those decisions. Again, this is where the orientation comes in. This is where you choose your fenestration strategy, how you cluster your buildings. You can have the greatest amount of impact here. And this is a roadmap of some of the architectural projects which our colleagues work on outside of master planning. And this is that legacy. All right. This has been in development. Masdar's been in development since about 2009 with some of the primary deliveries here. Now, we started very efficient, not too much renewable energy being generated here yet, but already energy reduction was at 46%, which was very impressive with the Siemens building. Now, I won't go through each one of these, but you're, again, welcome to visit these in Masdar. And you can see how that's advanced. And today, we actually have several net zero buildings existing already. This one's actually built now as well. We should have a photo there. With a couple more under construction. So these are now net zero energy buildings, a complete reality. And what you'll notice is they're not all the same type of building. Because something that Masdar likes to do is really be typology agnostic, which means we want to demonstrate the best way to build each one of these typologies to achieve these kinds of performance standards. So thank you very much. And I will now hand it over to Gaurish, who is not only our manager of master planning, but he's also responsible for gaining a lot of those accreditations that you saw here. So thank you, and Gaurish, please.
Thank you, Lukas. A couple of points which Lucas picked up was integrated design, passive design measures, and what we have done at Masdar City is the master planning principles follow three basic components of sustainability. One is how do we make it environmentally sustainable, and you see that compactness and right orientation gives you enough mechanisms of passive design measures which you can translate to you and use to reduce a lot of impact on the city, on the build form. So that becomes important. The second important component is how do we channelize the minimum amount of wind that we have in Masdar City. We get minimum winds, but it's important to channelize it for the benefit of the microclimate. Talking in the context of Paris Agreement and climate change mitigation, the cities are challenged by a couple of elements. One is resource consumption. The more the resource consumption, the more the CO2 emission, more the energy required to produce these resources, and the concept of circular economy. Second basic element that we try to address is the element of urban heat island effect. a combination of compactness, proper orientation, minimizes the impact of sun, and the introduction of linear wind park green reliefs. What they do about is channelize the wind flow, whereby the ambient temperatures, which Lucas explained at the ground level, which are basically result in the heat island effect, are reduced. So when the heat island is reduced, it automatically reduces the temperature in the atmosphere, and that's how I think is one of these are some of the important mechanisms which help environmental sustainability. The second major component is how do we make it socially sustainable. When Masdar started, we had as we say, it's not something new that we do at Masdar. We always try to implement sustainability. At the center of the diagram, or the center of the whole master plan, was a human being. And what the master plan is designed, and the buildings need to be designed, is for the people. And if you think the 3-minute, 5-minute concept of cities and neighborhoods is new, it's not new, because I have borrowed this diagram from the original master plan in 2008 by Foster's and Partners. It's not something that if you see the original diagram, the human was the most important. Between 3 minutes of walking distance are available all his basic requirements, and within 5 minutes is where the last mile connectivity reaches you. So in 5 minutes, or a 500-minute walk, 5 to 6 minutes, you can basically take care of a very compact walkable city, thereby minimizing the impact of transportation. Again, another point which Lucas I'll pick up was transportation and buildings take up around 60 to 70% of the energy consumption, the increase in CO2 emissions. So our focus has been deal with the build form and deal with the transportation. And the third component is all this needs livability. I'll stop at some point in time, and the transportation will be dealt with by my colleague, and the parks and livability is going to be extended by my colleague from the landscape department. But this is an important diagram of how facilities are provided in Masdar city. And finally, I think we've seen this in detail, so I will not repeat this. So the environmental reasons, how they help in building the design. And if you relate that diagram to the master plan, what you see here, a circle here, is exactly denotes the 500-meter diameter. That means the whole length of the urban fabric is 1.5 kilometer by 1.5 kilometer, broken down into 500-meter diameter circles each. And what we are right now doing is trying to develop it cluster by cluster, cluster by cluster, cluster by cluster. We added on to it the concept of land use distribution. Every city needs to have a heart. So there is a commercial heart, there is a residential institutional heart, and there is an innovation hub. So Masdar is all about innovation ecosystem. So as the innovation ecosystem develops on the north, the commercial ecosystem develops in the center as a core of the city, and then helps develop the residential neighborhoods. Again, every neighborhood is centered with a community facility. So within a distance of 3 minutes, you have your basic needs. So you don't need actually last mile connectivity also. You can walk. And within 5 minutes, you have every mode of transport that is available for you. And this is how the integration is, the land use and transportation integration. So this is a simple diagrammatic form of, again, thanks to our consultants. We have CBT architects and who have taken over from there and developed it a little further. If about planning, we move from concept master plan to detailed master plan, and this is where we are. And this is what we are dealing right now, pretty much developing the first phase of Masdar city, phase 1, which is around 2 million square meters of GFA. Around 800,000 to 1 million is almost under completion, or most of it is under completion. And we are aggressively growing. You're welcome to contact us anytime, and we'll take you to the next step. How have we dealt with sustainability? We started in 2008 with basic concepts when when sustainability was a big challenge, embracing the principles of one planet living. In 2012, Abu Dhabi's local system came about, which is called Estidama. For people who are not from Abu Dhabi, Estidama is Abu Dhabi's sustainability rating system, almost an equivalent of LEED and this. And then, if you see what transpired later on, by the time Paris agreements came about, etc., in 2015, is basically the Sustainable Development Goals. We can have another session on how master plan addresses it, or I can take it offline. But our original master plan dealt with around 8 of the sustainable development goals, which are directly related to sustainable master plan. We've expanded that forum to around 10 or 12. So right now we can comfortably say that 8 to 12 are addressed. Above that is the ambit of the regional authorities or the planning authorities of the citywide, which we strongly collaborate with Abu Dhabi Urban Planning Council. And this is how we have set up the framework. We've aligned ourselves. We've set out 10 master plans, citywide principles, and we've embraced Masdar as a 4 pearl community. For Estidama, there are rating of 5 categories. 4 is the second highest category. Of course, we will aspire to reach 5, but there are certain parameters beyond our control which may have a limitation. Getting back to Estidama, a little bit of the categories and what is important is the context of the talk we are doing today is basically the different categories which reduce resource consumption, thermal comfort, thereby help the climate change mitigation. And again, just to give you an idea, I'll not go into detail. And this is where we are today. We have a master plan, we have an urban landscape, which basically consists of various categories. We have district park, the sports parks, we have the gateways, which are designed already. We have urban plazas, which help at an urban design level for the cluster. And the next category is we have urban plazas within the city. So if you take a concept of all these elements, each of these elements can be experienced by each of the cluster within a walkable distance of 300 meters to 500 meters. So that's the whole category. This is probably, and then what do we do about it is our community. So all these headings you see are all developed as part of a livable community. There's no community without people. You can design the best buildings, and if you don't have the people to live, and if you don't give them the facility, they'll just drive out. When they drive out, they'll use transport. When they use transport, they will emit CO2. All efforts can be zeroed, but can be helped by providing everything. This is a district park, which has 2 components: innovation and sports park. My colleague is going to take you into detail as a case study of how it is designed. The central park, which is already existing to help you out experience it. The linear park, which will be under construction, and the plaza. I think that's my last, and I'll hand over after speaking about a livable community. I'll hand it over to the specialty, which is transportation, which is basically integrated in the master planning process. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. This is Asha Pawar. I'm the transportation manager for Masdar City, and as we all know, cities, they basically act as the human body, and transportation is an integral part of the human body. These are acting as arteries and the veins in the human body. So transportation is very, very important for any city to be functional and workable. So I'll take you to the, if you see here on the left side, there's a pyramid where it's a traditional cities transit, where the people were emphasizing more on the car trips rather than on the walking and the cycling. So as we are growing up on the traditional cities transit pyramid, car was the most important, and then goes up the shared mobility, then comes to the public transport, and the least preference was given to the walking and the cycling. Whereas in the Mazda City Transit, we have inverted this pyramid. So the car is the least preference, and we gave the most preference to the walking and the cycling. As my colleagues Lukas and Gaurish, they have already discussed about how we have come up with the walking and cycling, how it has been developed more, so that people, we are prioritizing the environment for the pedestrians. So basically, we have inverted the transportation pyramid. And there are certain sustainable transportation initiatives what we have taken. The first one is the zero emissions vehicles, because we wanted to reduce the CO2 emissions for the transportation, the vehicles. The second one is the autonomous vehicles. We have been pioneering the autonomous vehicles across UAE. We were the first one to bring the autonomous vehicle since 2008. Then the third one is the shared mobility. We also have focus on the shared mobility in terms of the car sharing as well as the bike sharing. The last one is the last mile connectivity, where we have the e-scooters and emphasizing more on the pedestrians and the cyclists. So moving on to the next, the transportation master plan. While developing the master plan, we have carried out a lot of emphasis on various aspects of the transportation master plan. The first one is the land use, where the land use sits. That is very, very important because as Gaurish had explained, like, we had the neighborhoods at every 500 meters, and then we have the residentials and other community facilities. Then comes the road network, where it's like, we have come up with the entire road network system. We have a hierarchy of road network where we have, like, on the periphery at the accesses, we have a 3x3 lanes, and whereas by going next, it goes to the 2x2, and then within the districts, it's or neighborhoods, we have the 1x1 lanes. Then next one is public transport. That is very, very important in order to reduce the CO2 emissions, because once the entire traffic is coming or using the public transport, it leads to the reduction in the CO2 emissions. Next is the walking and cycling. We have come up with the master plan where we have the 350-meter catchment for the public transport, and then within each neighborhood or sector, the walking and cycling has been integrated so well that people are using that facilities. Then also the junction analysis, accessibility and parking. So in terms of accessibility, we have done the plot accesses in such a way so that, it's safe and socially more important for the plots. Next one is the parking. In parking, we have come up with various strategies, because if each and every building has the parking underneath or have the parking floors on the podium, then it could not be economically sustainable. We have come up with a strategy where we have the co-located parking plots, which means that our entire podium, which was built in 2008 to 10, we had come up with the co-located parking plot for the entire podium. So if you look into our sustainable transportation covering the Abu Dhabi city-wide transit, we have various modes of transportation, which is covering the Masdar city connecting to the Abu Dhabi city-wide. So the first line is the regional rail, which is passing through the Masdar city. Then comes the metro. There are various routes which are passing through the Masdar city. The red one is the metro line. As you can see, it's basically cutting the city into two halves. Then comes a diagonal spine, which is the LRT/BRT. So initially the ITC plan is to bring BRT and then later on develop the LRT. And then all along, so we have this as a big square, which we say. So this is the big square. And all along the 2x2 streets, we have the ITC buses, which will be running on these road network. So moving on to the Masdar city. So once basically you have entered the Masdar city using the public transport or your personal mode of transport, you don't have to take your own car inside Masdar city. So we have various options available for the Masdar city transit. And how it has been developed is basically, if you see, as Gaurish said, we have the neighborhoods all along around the Masdar city center. So all this has been connected by our own public transport, which is the GRT. So this blue line, basically, this is all connecting the neighborhood centers through our own Masdar city transit. And then we also have the PRT, which is connecting from our North Car Park to another building under the podium. And then we have also the point-to-point connectivity through the electric vehicles. So as we have already talked about the various modes of transportation, this is the flavor what we had. We also have been a test bed for various technologies. So the first one, as you can see over here, is the Eco Bus, which we had collaborated with ITC to test this electric vehicle. The another one is 100% electric bus that has also been tested. And then the electric vehicles, which takes point to point. Then next comes the PRT. We had the first generation, which is the PRT, the white vehicle, which has been operating since 2008. And then the PRT 2.0 is the Navia, which is operating on the podium. And then we have another third-party transit modes, which is the electric scooters that has been in collaboration with the ITC, and various multiple operators are operating these electric scooters. And then the next one is the Kareem bikes. This is also, we had a vast network of this Kareem bikes as well as the e-scooters, which are which are connecting the various developments within the city. And then we have the e-car Tesla sharing, which you can actually take it from Masdar city and go outside of the Masdar city to the Abu Dhabi island. So regarding the SAVI, which is the smart and autonomous vehicle industry, Mazda City has been pioneering sustainable mobility and transport for over 10 years. And it is now the home of the smart and autonomous vehicle industry cluster, set to transform the landscape of smart and autonomous vehicles across air, land, and sea. So we also has been a pioneering in exploring hydrogen production since 2008, and we have partnered with EDNOC, the world's first green hydrogen station, that is H2Go. And this is some of the statistics from the last mile connectivity, which is for the e-scooters. As you can see, we had launched this service on 8 December 2022. The number of trips were quite high during winters, but as the summer approaches, due to the heat, the number of trips starts slightly reducing it. But you can see there is a huge connectivity and accessibility for over the podium and along all the existing built assets. And you can also take these scooters to the adjacent developments, that is the Khalifa city. And finally, the last mile connectivity, which is the pedestrian and the cyclist network. We follow various hierarchies of the cycling network, where basically all along the 2x2 streets, we have a dedicated 3-meter or 4-meter cycle tracks. And then we have the next one is also the blue one, which is all along the periphery of the Masdar city. That's Mamsha, which is an uninterrupted dedicated track for the jogging and the cycling. And then we also have the cycling track all along the green fingers, that is also connecting the various cycling tracks across the city. And as my colleagues had already explained, like, how we have achieved this pedestrian network or enhance the pedestrian prioritized environment by considering the microclimate and the orientation for shade by having a compacted buildings and neighborhoods and livable communities, and also by the building massing. And then this open spaces and the green fingers also promote the air movement, which helps the pedestrians to take, as this is a very well connected network. So in total, right now, we have a 5 kilometers of jogging track, and the existing cycling tracks are 9.5 kilometers, which are the dedicated cycle tracks all along the existing streets. Thank you. Over to Sebastien.
Thank you very much. I think as all the master planning principles and transportation have been sort of explained very clearly, I think what we'd like to show you now is a case study for one of our projects, which was Masdar Park. Masdar Park is the latest asset that we've developed, and basically it's targeting the highest possible sustainability accreditations that we can get. And I'll explain to you the process, how we got through that. But in terms of context, it's roughly 1.2 kilometers in length. The area is similar in size to this entire complex that we're standing in, including the hotel and car parking, or similar in scale to Dubai Mall. It's a big park, and basically it serves not only Masdar city, but the wider district areas, Khalifa, Raha, etc. The vision was based around sports, food, and community. There we are. And as we developed the vision of what this park would be, we have to follow government guidance. So, for example, there's the Masdar City Public Realm Design Manual, the Abu Dhabi Public Realm Design Manual, which is the government requirement on what all parks across the city have to provide. We also have the Landscape Design Report, which is our commitment as to the facilities and the level of provisions that we provide. In addition, the first thing that we had to identify is, like, who are we designing for? We're designing for people, but we need to be more specific than that. In Mazdar's case, we had a lot of younger people, Generation Z, in terms of the university, in terms of Etihad flight crew. We had to cater to them. We also have new buildings coming online with a growing family population. And as well, we've identified that there was a market gap for more sports provision. So essentially that was beginning to build the goalposts, if you like, of how we would develop the park. Project parameters, shade, very important. I think exactly as my colleagues have explained, anywhere that you can get more shade, reduce the impacts of the sun, orientation to breeze, you're creating an environment that people will want to go to. Mixed sports, food, mosque, communities. I'm going to explain the mosque in more detail later on. And also pilot initiatives. Masdar Park also hosts Abu Dhabi's first electrical hub distribution, which is operated by ADNOC. And finally, sustainability. We had to achieve the highest possible sustainability accreditations, in this case, LEED Platinum and PRS Exemplar. In addition, senior management also asked, can we deliver this by COP28? Which for us made it challenging in the sense that we had a 6-month design timeline and a 9-month construction period. Though, spoiler alert, we did get it done on times. And the question I guess we would ask for any project is what level of sustainability can we afford? And there's 2 ways to measure that. One is through cost, obviously, CapEx. The other one is time. Now, if we're developing a project in a very short space of time, we have to be very focused on the sustainability initiatives that we would be targeting. Now, the step, as we mentioned, define the project and the timeframes. We've done that. Develop a vision. And one thing I'd like to point out is the sustainability. It's not an add-on. Lukas was highlighting this at the beginning. At every step of the process, we're looking at it and we're considering how we can develop it, and more importantly, how we can tweak it through the process. The vision for Masdar Park was developed by SLA. They're a nature-based design studio out of Denmark. This was the original concept, but basically sports, nature, food, innovation, community, and tech. I love this photo. This is from the opening day event, and I think it just captures Masdar Park, and just these are the type of spaces that we all want to live in. You know, there's activation, there's color, there's shade, there's animation, there's food. It's a pedestrian first environment. So how did we do this? I think the next 2 slides are probably the most critical in explaining that. And I hope if there's a key takeaway that you get from this presentation, it is these next two slides. So SLA's vision was retain all the existing trees. It was a brownfields development, and I think that was actually the genius of the plan. By retaining all the trees, we've already got an established mature tree canopy. Secondly, look for localized mounting, as any construction project will generate an element of construction waste. Are we shipping that off to landfills, or can we use that as part of our localized mounting? In addition, what it also does is by having the trees slightly higher to the water table, it provides a much better growing environment where after a couple of years they can grow much larger and faster and sequester more carbon. Activation and programming, it was all about then basically building the environment that people would want to go to. All the key activations are to the side, the vehicle accesses are to the side, but it's about getting people into the center space, exactly as per the diagram on number 1. Everything was aligned to the cooling breezes. Masdar's about 1 kilometer away from the sea, so we are able to capture those breezes and reduce the temperatures down to by 2-3 degrees. In addition, water-sensitive design. I think this is probably one of the most critical things that any landscape projects have to consider in this region. Water is a scarce commodity. We have to be very careful how we do it. For park projects, we are allowed a slightly higher provision of water. We're allowed up to 4 litres per square metre per day. We also overcame our water consumption use by being very selective on how we use turf. Everyone likes a lawn, a grassy area to sit down, have a picnic, kick a ball. Masdar Park also offers that, but we don't do it everywhere. We have limited areas, and they're strategically co-located with where people are likely to sit. Also looked at water retention on a day like today. For example, we've got storms coming in. Rather than investing in heavy infrastructure, pipes, manholes, etc., we use water collection basins that allow the water to percolate through to the landscape and the groundwater. And finally, nanoclay. We did a trial with using liquid nanoclay where we're able to reduce the water consumption to areas by over 50%. Tree planting strategies, as mentioned, we retained all the existing trees. We got new, smaller trees. That may sound counterintuitive, but the smaller trees actually grow faster and they embed much better into their environment. And finally, transplants and stock. Masdar City was seeing a large development program in the lead up to COP28. So rather than killing the trees for any of our other development projects or street projects, we were able to transplant them and use them in the park. Solar power generation is used to car parks wherever possible. That generates about 70% of the park power, as per Estadama. Integrated BMS to all key assets, again linked to our Masdar City Smart Centre. And we're now beginning to explore food production. One of the things we have is a food hall, and we're able to generate, once that's in operation, of course, we're able to collect all of the waste food, mix it with the green waste and create compost. So it's the beginning of a circular economy principle. There were two key buildings. One was the food hall, which we're in the process of fitting out. It's actually built now. You can see the sort of initial opening launch, and the prayer area, which we're calling Estadama Mosque or Sustainability Mosque. This is a LEED Platinum building, 500 square meters in area, and it achieved the highest accreditations. It was designed by ex-architects. The approach was that for each of the 5 cycles of prayer, there's a different light experience. So whenever people use the building, it's a different experience all the time. We also had mashrabiyah screens around the building that protect the building envelope from direct sunlight, airtight envelope, compact mass, integration with the BMS system as well. But together, there's some amazing statistics. 50% reduced energy compared to a traditional mosque, 40% cooling energy reduction, 61% water conservation, including the immediate landscape, 60% local construction materials, which is all about supporting the UAE economy, nurturing talent, very much what this whole WEFES event is all about. And finally, 93% of waste diverted from landfills. We actually used it to our park to help create the landfill and formations. These are some of the photos. It's operational. Please come down and see it. And look, just to sum up, here are just some of the key photos of the park: sports, nature, food. And I think this is my last slide, but it just shows how by master planning at the very beginning, considering Estadama and sustainability at all stages of the design, you can end up with a park like this that meets and exceeds the expectations and gets the highest possible sustainability accreditations. So thank you very much. I'll hand over to Michelle.
Hey. Thank you very much. Masdar City looks pretty fantastic, doesn't it? Show of hands, who has been there? Okay, great. But it's probably well worth a visit time and time again. So I want to thank my colleagues, and they're going to be hanging around just for a little bit for some Q&A. If you have any burning questions, please let me know. Then we'll have a break. So who has the first question? Presentations were too good. So I'm sure that my colleagues would love to hang around a little bit if you just want to interact with them one-on-one. And as I said, we will have a short break, and then I have to put my glasses on. We're going to have a session which is at 12:30, and it's called Lessons from the Middle East Using Traditional Passive Architectural Design for Sustainable Cities. These are some of my favorite colleagues. The session coming up, also 2 of my favorite colleagues. Be ready for a very lively conversation and debate between Mr. Chris Wan, who is Masdar City's Associate Director of Sustainability and CSR, and Lutz Wilgen, who is our Head of Design. So please ask questions of my team members, and I'll look forward to seeing you at 12:30. Go have lunch, eat plant-based. Thank you.
Sorry, just since I have you guys here, a shameless plug. We will be launching our pump track with a major event. This is pretty exciting. It's a lovely facility that's been built to UCI standards to be able to host the host the World Championships that are sponsored by Red Bull, actually. So April 27th, please come bring your families. There's going to be some demonstrations for professional riders, and you will all be welcome to join us. You can ride it on a bike, skateboard, essentially anything rolling, as well as there's a special track for people of determination as well to meet some of our social standards about inclusivity. So thank you, and I guess we can take questions offline if anybody wants to follow up. Thanks again.